didn't plan to make a video of this, so we're going to start at the end, but I'll show you how to take it apart as I put it back together. The trigger quit working on the Mig gun, and it's weekend. I wanted to go ahead, so I thought I'll try to fix it. Took it apart, and it was such a simple fix, I decided to make a video of it, hopefully to help someone else out. I've got a Hobart handler. It's a 140. It came, this is the original gun. It's a Miller gun. I didn't see a model number on it. And here's the trigger out of it. And as you depress the trigger, it was not making continuity through it. So here's the switch apart. I straightened these out. These are bent up, and I straightened them out because I assumed that they were connected to this micro switch inside here, but it is not. And the problem was, what connects the micro switch to these is just this piece of metal pushes through that slot and touches. So when I took it apart and checked just the micro switch, there was continuity through here. And the problem was, where these two little tabs push into here, there's a gap there. It's just a friction connection between these tabs and these pieces of metal here. So you don't need to unbend those, just pull this out or wiggle it around. I pulled it out, put a little dielectric grease on each one, and then pushed it back in, and that's working just fine. So if your trigger is intermittent or completely quit working, first place to check would be, this is the wire from the gun. On this machine, it plugs in right here. So just take those wires off, connect your ohm meter to it, to right here, pull the trigger and see if you have continuity going across there. If you don't, then the next step is in the gun. The gun comes apart pretty easy. So I've got the gun back together. Now I can show you the continuity test, how it should work. So these two wires are the wire from the gun, unplugged from the machine, connected to the continuity tester. So when you pull the trigger, you should have continuity going across those two wires. If there's no continuity or it's erratic, then it could be anywhere in that wire, but go next to the trigger. That's the most likely. To take the switch out, this switch is already apart, and we'll talk about that later. But to get the switch unit out, the end of the gun turns about 90 degrees to the right. So you turn it to the right and then pry it back, pull it back. You can put a little screwdriver or something in here to pry it. And when it comes out, see there's a pin right here, a little hole right here. That's what holds that part of the switch. On the other end, there's this tooth that goes into a slot inside the gun. So when you pull that out, those two wires will still be connected, and just take those wires off. So my switch has been apart and back together again, so it's working like it should be. Put your two continuity testers wires on there, and when you pull this switch, you should have continuity across it. Before I took it apart, it did not. To take it apart, it's really so simple. So there's 3 pins. The first pin just presses out, and that's the trigger. And the trigger's got a little spring that sits on a pin in there. When you put it back together, put it on that pin. And then to get the micro switch out, take those other 2 pins out. then I used a little pry bar and just pull that micro switch out. And that's so when I took it out and tested it across here, it was working just fine. So then when I looked in there, I just determined that's where the problem was. Put a little dielectric grease here and here, put it back together. Hope that works for you. So to make this a little easier for next time, I put a little that same dielectric grease just on this plastic here. So it came apart a little easier in the video than what it did originally. When I'm taking things apart, I'll oftentimes use a marker to mark pieces. See here, not that it would matter on these two wires, but I marked which wire went where. So if you're working on a motor where you have multiple wires, it just makes the assembly easier. This would be an example of, say you weren't in a situation you weren't sure which way the switch was going to go. If you just put the white there and there, then you know it goes there. Oops, and not the other way.